Welcome to this explainer. Today we're tackling something that's complex, a little dark, but honestly, absolutely fascinating. We're going to demystify the covert playbook of manipulation, pull back the curtain. By the time we wrap up, you're going to have a really clear, structured understanding of exactly how these hidden tactics actually work in the real world. Okay, let's dive right into this. 50%. According to Psychology Today, over half of all adults will experience emotional abuse at some point in their lives. I mean, that is a staggering statistic, right? We're not just talking about movie villains here. This is happening in our offices, our friend groups, even our homes. The stakes are incredibly real, and it's exactly why we need to unpack how this covert game is played. So, here's our roadmap for this pretty heavy topic. We're going to look at 1, the anatomy of manipulation. Then, 2, phase 1, the trap. Moving into 3, phase 2, the control. Then 4, the accidental manipulator. And finally, 5, breaking the cycle. All right, starting with section 1, the anatomy of manipulation and the 3 core goals. Because really, all of this stems from a deep inner desire for power and control. And this brilliantly illustrates how those goals play out. Because while the actual tactics manipulators use can be all over the map, they almost always serve one of these 3 foundational objectives. Goal 1 is hiding their true intentions, and they usually do this by totally faking shared interests. Goal 2 is avoiding responsibility, playing the victim so somehow you end up apologizing to them. And then goal 3, which is honestly one of the most damaging, is gaining your trust way faster than you'd normally give it, often using a tactic called love bombing. Which brings us to section 2, phase 1, the trap. Let's look at how they lure people in right from the very beginning. Because manipulators usually don't just start off being awful. They have to carefully set the trap when you first meet. So in those early days, you've got to watch out for the warning signs of a totally artificial connection. They might pretend to love everything you love, but their actions just kind of feel off. They'll also weaponize compliments, just showering you with over-the-top praise so you drop your guard. And while they're doing that, they're asking these probing, super personal questions. It feels like an interview. They aren't just being nice, they are literally digging for your fears and secrets to use later. They're forcing a rapid connection. And that forced connection usually leads to something called love bombing. Basically, this is establishing a false sense of intimacy through overwhelming signs of adoration. We're talking about those intense I love yous when you've known each other for like a week, huge grand gestures, crazy oversharing. The whole point of this tactic is to capture you as prey, pulling you straight into their exclusive inner circle before you even realize a game is being played. Oh, and in this phase, everything has strings attached. They might do all these nice things for you, but it's an illusion. Every single small favor, every little gift comes with an invisible string. They're basically building up this ledger, making you feel indebted to them. That way, when they ask for a massive favor later down the road, you feel absolutely obligated to say yes. Okay, let's move to and see how this builds in section 3. Phase 2, the control. This is where the trap snaps shut and the abuse actually starts. Once a manipulator feels like they've got you securely in their grip, things get a lot darker. To sustain that control, they'll use all sorts of toxic tactics. They'll throw out these mean insults but then claim they were just joking and call you too sensitive. They'll actively try to isolate you from your friends and family so you depend only on them. And man, they absolutely love minimizing your problems. Like, say you complain about a really painful sunburn. They will immediately pivot and start complaining about how sore they are from their recent workout. They literally steal the spotlight just to make sure you're constantly catering to their needs. And then they bring in the heavy machinery, gaslighting. This is a manipulative technique that totally twists the truth to make you question your own memory, perception, and even your sanity. If they do something hurtful and want to avoid responsibility, they are definitely not going to apologize. Instead, they rewrite history. They'll look you right in the eye and say, that never happened, or you're misremembering it, or honestly, just you're crazy. It is so dangerous because over time, you start relying entirely on them to define what reality actually is. There's also another term we need to add to your psychological vocabulary, and that's triangulation. This happens when the manipulator drags a third person, like a coworker, an ex, maybe a family member, into your conflict, purely to take their side. It's totally designed to create this you versus everyone else dynamic, leaving you feeling incredibly outnumbered, isolated, and just inferior. So the crucial point is that a manipulator will do absolutely anything to keep you off balance. Usually that means wildly overcomplicating or oversimplifying a totally valid concern. Let's look at the classic happy hour anecdote from our sources. Say your partner comes home super late without texting, and you just calmly mention you wish they'd communicated. A manipulator will twist this instantly. They'll say something like, "Oh, so I guess I'm not allowed to go to happy hour? You just don't want me to be happy?" And boom, suddenly you are on the defensive, apologizing, trying to explain that of course you want them to be happy. You've completely lost the original point of the conversation, which was just about basic consideration. Now, Section 4, the accidental manipulator. This is where we get to the real twist of our explainer. Because if we just sit here pointing fingers at everyone else, we are missing half the picture. So I have to ask you something that might be a little uncomfortable. Are you the manipulator? It's a surprising question, right? But the reality is, manipulation isn't always this calculated evil plot by some mastermind. Sometimes it happens completely by accident. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the massive distinction it draws. Intentional manipulation is malicious. It's actively seeking power and control over someone. But unintentional manipulation, that is often just driven by our own unhealed hurt. It's this messy mix of wanting to get our way combined with total recklessness about how our actions affect the other person. Sometimes we manipulate people simply because we don't have the self-awareness to deal with our own pain properly. Let's look at how these unintentional tactics actually show up in everyday habits. Like, have you ever played the martyr? Aggressively cleaning the kitchen just to make your roommates feel guilty, instead of actually just asking for some help? Or maybe you embellish facts to get a little pity. The source gives a great example. If you have a doctor's appointment at 9 a.m., do you tell people it's at 7:30 a.m. just because that's when you have to wake up? You're subtly mining for sympathy there. And what about the silent treatment? A lot of times we just shut down in an argument because we're hurt and we don't know what to say. But the thing is, that silence acts as an emotional weapon. It manipulates the other person into extreme anxiety, even if we aren't being malicious. All right, bringing it home with Section 5, breaking the cycle. This is all about building your defense system. Whether you're dealing with a malicious master manipulator or just someone who is recklessly hurting you with their bad habits, you absolutely need a defense strategy. Step 1 is trusting your gut. Step 2, recognize the patterns we've just talked about. Step 3 is establishing firm boundaries. And Step 4 is distancing yourself when you have to. Listen, the absolute hardest truth to accept here is that you cannot control the manipulator. You can't love them into being an honest person, and you cannot argue them into taking responsibility. You can only control what you will personally tolerate. Which really brings us back to intuition, right? It is your absolute strongest defense mechanism. Like the quote says, if your gut is telling you something's off, there's a really good chance it is. Always trust your gut, especially in those super early days of meeting someone new. If the connection feels way too fast, or the compliments feel a little too heavy, or you just have this weird sense of unease that you can't logically explain, listen to it. Your body is picking up on those hidden red flags long before your conscious brain processes the trap. We've covered a ton of psychological ground today, from love bombing and gaslighting all the way to unintentional guilt trips. But now it is time to take this knowledge off the screen and bring it into your actual life. So I want to leave you with one really powerful question. What boundary will you set today to protect your peace? Think about it, take some action, and keep your peace protected. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I absolutely cannot wait to dive into our next topic with you.